Have you ever gotten that feeling at the end of a new superhero movie where you wish you had some sort of superpower? What if I told you that there are people across the world who claim to have extraordinary supernatural abilities? Would you believe me? In this documentary, we will look at some of these individuals and get expert opinions on whether they are fake.
Much more sceptical about that one.
I'm a little bit more doubtful of that one.
Or real.
I actually believe that one. I totally buy that one.
Quite a lot of this where I can explain less of how they've done it.
Welcome to Super. The subjects we will look at in this documentary all featured in a documentary series from 2010 called Stan Lee's Superhumans. The show's purpose was to find people from around the world who claim to have extraordinary physical or mental abilities and subject them to scientific testing to see if they really are superhuman. I have contacted two experts in documentary production to get their personal and professional opinions on the show, as well as the subjects that feature in it. The first subject we will look at is a man from San Diego called Scott Flansburgh, who is referred to as the human calculator. It appears Scott can do complicated mathematical equations almost instantly, even quicker than a calculator.
95
times
E5.
8,075.
So how is this possible? Well, neurologist Dr. David Hubbard conducted a test monitoring Scott's brain activity whilst he engaged in solving mathematical sums and compared the results to that of a normal brain.
So now let's look at Broca's area in you. So instead of seeing that, we're seeing an area that's not the same as in Daniel.
The discovery was that Scott uses a totally different part of his brain than the average person does when doing maths, with most of the activity happening in the same area that controls movement.
Wow.
I asked one of my experts, Mark, if he believed what he was seeing.
I actually believe that one. I totally buy that one. It's possible that it could have been faked, but I know that there are definitely people that we normally call savants that have been able to do similar sort of things again and again. In various different circumstances. So that one I buy. I do believe that one.
I then asked Mark if he believed that anyone could learn to solve sums as quickly as Scott does.
Yeah, so I think most people, I don't think anyone, I think there will be some limitations, but I think the greater majority of people can. And I think it's all about sort of neural connections in your brain. It's all about putting these kind of things together, and the process of learning itself creates those neural connections. So I guess the younger you start people doing that, the more they will be able to reach that same sort of level.
I also asked my other expert, Joe, to see if he believed in Scott's abilities.
I certainly believe most of what I'm seeing now. I don't doubt that what the doctors there are saying. They obviously are more well versed in it than I am. But because it's a documentary and because it's the way it's put together, there's always some element of doubt. Just in terms of we never see exactly everything. When something's cut together, you miss certain bits, and they would have edited bits out of it. So there may have been in that first section parts where he was beaten by other people on the calculators, but it might be cut in such a way that we only see a certain reaction.
The next subject I looked at is Guy Bavley from Los Angeles, who claims to have the power of telekinesis and says he can move and bend objects using only his mind.
I hope there's more to him than spoon bending.
Guy demonstrates his ability on a number of different objects in a hardware store before the presenter Daniel brings him to meet neuropsychologist Bill Scott. Bill uses an advanced piece of equipment known as an EEG to measure the electrical frequencies released from Guy's brain. The results suggest that there is a significant increase in gamma activity at the exact moment Guy supposedly knocks over the pen with his telekinetic powers.
I've never seen anything like it.
I asked Mark if he believed this one.
I'm much more skeptical about that one, because I have believed people like that in the past, have seen them then sort of move stuff and be convinced by it, only to then find out later they've been sort of revealed as a fraud. And I know some of the tricks that they're doing. The first one and the last one, I'm pretty sure I know how he does it. The middle one has me stumped, though. I genuinely don't know how the whole feather down the face thing. I can't explain that one, but I'm fairly sure I know how he does the first one and the last one.
I asked Joe if he believed in Guy's kinetic powers.
I'm a little bit more doubtful of that one. I'm not sure I quite buy what he's doing.
I then asked Joe if there are any rules or laws that prevent people from making a false documentary.
No. There are no rules that can stop you from making a false documentary. Otherwise, you wouldn't have This Is Spinal Tap, or you wouldn't have The Office. That use all the trappings of how you might shoot a documentary, but to be able to make things up. It's part of creativity. So there are no rules against that. So that can be done. Now, some people make complaints about that, and there have been shows that have been made in the past where complaints are made saying that you're making this seem like it's a real thing when actually it's not. But there's no inherent rules against that to say that you can't do that. There might be some certain guidelines that are there, and sometimes people have to put a disclaimer at the beginning for certain things. But generally speaking, you're allowed to use the form that you want.
The third subject is Alexander Levitt, a man from Los Angeles who was born blind but uses his mind to see everything around him, even with a blindfold on. Alexander first impresses Daniel by beating him at a round of pool, and then baffles a neuropsychologist as he completes a sight test, all whilst wearing a blindfold. In the third task, he must navigate his way around a pitch-black room, still wearing a blindfold, to find and destroy 4 vases with a baseball bat. Not only does Alexander destroy them all, he describes the shape and colour of each one with detail. Even the scientists are baffled by this one, but what do my experts think?
Again, I'm a little bit more with this one. There are some elements of doubt, but there is quite a lot of this where I can explain less of how they've done it.
I'm really sort of torn with that one. Because my instant impression was no, it's ridiculous. But I don't know. There's something there possibly. The reason I'm a bit mixed about whether I believe this one is because I do know that in America, the law enforcement agencies have given quite a lot of credence to people that do remote viewing. And I know the FBI particularly have used a couple of very credible blind people who supposedly can remote view to try and give them a perception of where, for instance, a kidnapped victim is being kept. And they do have quite a high success rate. So that is why I think, there could be something to it. but I suppose it's really, really difficult with that clip to see whether that's what's going on or not, really.
The final subject we will look at is Isao Machi, a modern-day swordsman with such precise sword skills that he can cut a pellet in half when fired at him from a BB gun. The Doctor Who analyses the results, concludes this ability must be superhuman.
Entirely different sensory level because he's not visually processing it.
But Mark and Joe have a different view.
This is definitely a training one. Absolutely. I think anyone given the same dedication and the same time could achieve it.
I think it's something you can train to do. If you look at something like a Formula One driver who are very, very used to driving at extreme high speed, they become acclimatized to it. And Formula One drivers have said that they actually perceive things at a much slower rate, how you and I might see 50 or 60 miles an hour, okay, rather than 200 miles an hour. And you become acclimatized, your brain gets used to it. So I do believe this is something you can train for to get better at.
I also asked Joe if it would be possible to use CGI for this shot, given this documentary was made in 2010.
Yes, it would. The CG has been very good for a long time. So yes, it would be possible to use CG for this shot. The other thing that makes it easier to potentially use CG is when they show it specifically. I think they highlight it in a different color and they put the background kind of monochrome, allowing you a bit more freedom in terms of if you're playing with those things already, your audience is slightly distracted and will get away with something.
For my final question, I asked both my experts if they thought the show was deliberately trying to make a connection to comic superheroes through the use of Stan Lee as a host.
Undeniably, they're trying to make a linkage to get people interested in that world, maybe to get them interested in the world of science, but via using superheroes as a kind of a conduit to do that. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But what it does do is it gives it a slight sense of unbelievability.
It naturally makes it from the start a little bit less credible because you're kind of thinking, well, obviously comic books are made up, so maybe this is made up as well. But of course, I understand, that's going to make it instantly more interesting. People that have watched those comic book films or read the comic books are going to go, oh, okay, well, is this real? Could this be real? So it's a natural kind of in for this subject matter.
So overall, it seems the intention of Stan Lee's Superhumans was to get people interested in the superhero genre and excited about the possibility of there being real superhumans in existence. Based on what my experts have said, it seems a lot of the footage could have been manipulated or exaggerated to meet the viewer's expectations. However, there are moments where the subjects appear to demonstrate abilities that are rare and cannot fully be explained by scientific analysis. So maybe there really are people out there with extraordinary supernatural abilities. Maybe the next time you see something a little strange, you'll think differently about it. Or maybe you'll discover that you have an extraordinary ability you never realised before.